Hello all you DIY enthusiasts. This is what we're trying to achieve. Starting from the top so that any mess you make will all get cleaned up. The wall ties have been done, so if you're planning to do this, check your wall ties first. Now the reason why we're doing this is because the wall had been painted and the paint seals the moisture in, which then freezes. Sure, it's fine when you first do the painting, but after a while it starts to break down, water gets behind the paint, it freezes, and it degrades the face of the bricks. So here we go. So this is the original pointing on the whole estate, and as you can see it's just back from the front of the brick, only about 1 millimetre. And that is what we're trying to copy, and it's not totally accurate, it's not really neat. There are places where as you can see it hasn't got a little ridge in the middle and it's all flat. It's because when they built these places they had to work to time. Right, to start with we got to go inwards so as not to break the front of the bricks or damage the front of the bricks. So just to break the tension, I'm going to go all the way along, just going inwards as like so. Then with the big saw or whatever, and I'm pushing downwards and lifting upwards. And there we go. And then the perps, we do the same sort of thing. And then clean out. I like this finger pointing because it fits in between the joints, and that's really what you want. You want something that fits in between, so you want to get it pressure. There's one that I made some years ago. It's been well used. Every so often I just run that across a grinder, but you know, and then you need a brush. You need two brushes. One that's slightly harder than the other, and I'll show you for why. Because when you're brushing off, when you've finished, you might want a bit more pressure than normal. And also, I like to use a float because I can rest it on the lower brick to point in. But a hawk is very useful. Hawk. It's only a piece of broom handle, look, screwed through, that's all it is, and that's so that I can, and I've actually chamfered the edges, and that's so that you can get a bit more on if. Okay, so all cleaned out, ready to go. Still got a bit more to cut it down low, but I'm going to point that lot in before I cut the bottom lot out. In other words, do a bit at a time. What we need to do now is to get the background wet to slow down the line pointing drying out. So I'm going to use a hose, but you could use an ordinary pumpy up spray. And when I have soaked the brickwork, I won't go straight on point. I shall leave it for half an hour or so to let the face of the bricks dry off. So yeah, so the point is where I'm making the back, the inside of the bricks damp to slow down the pointing. Oh, there we go. Time to make a mix. Now this is the lime that I'm using. The most important bit is this bottom bit here where it says NHL 3.5. That means that it's a lime that's been controlled when it's been made, and you can use it just in exactly the same way as you would use cement. Right, the mix is 3 in 1, and I use these buckets because they're a good way of doing it. And that's 1, 2 of those, then 1 of lime, and an amount of grit. That's going to be like a half. Okay, then we've got 1 more of them to go in. There we go, and that's my mix. And that, there's enough there, that will last me about an hour of pointing. Right, now then, we need to make sure that is well mixed before we add the water. And one good way of mixing is to simply keep swapping it from one bucket to another. You don't want to mix more than what you can use in a sensible amount of time, because it starts to go off, and you don't want that, do you? Right, that'll do. That's well mixed, as you can see. Oh, water. No, that's not. I shouldn't be doing that. I should be measuring the water in. Now, and I know it to be, I know it to take, for that mix, I know it to be not quite half of one of these. Now I've already put some in, haven't I? So there we go, I'm going to mix that now. So you measure everything. And what we're looking for, you're better off not having enough water in, because as you mix it, it becomes fatter. In other words, more sticky. There we go. And we could pour that back and forth if we wished. You need to, what we're trying to do is to put air, get as much air in as possible. How did we get a stone in there? We're trying to get air into the mix. And one good way of doing that is the more times you turn it, the better. That's a good way of getting air in there. And that's looking about right. There's one way of testing it, and that is so just to flatten it and see if it stay on the trowel, and it does. So you see, that's not bad at all, that. So you see that? You'll get used to it. If you're doing it yourself, you'll get used to how to mix it to get what you want. Now you can see that's quite dry look, but by pumping air into it you will get it smoother, and it's the smoothness of you is what you want, not the wetness. need to work air into it, and you'll soon see if it's smooth enough, because you do that. There you go, look at that. That ain't bad at all, is it? And you can get rid of bits of rubbish that's in there as well. That's it. Rubbish in there. I think sometimes the line has bits in it. There we go, that's ready for perps. Okay, so I've done a bit, so now let's show you how I do the next bit. Make sure it's all nice and flatted on the hawk. I'm going to use a hawk, even though the hawk does leave smudges on the brick below, but we're not too worried about that because you can brush them off afterwards. So feed it in. I've got to get started. Ideally you feed back against what you've just put in. Of course my hands are in the way so you can't see what I'm doing, but never mind. So you work back against what you've put in. That way you're sure that you're not going to leave any voids. A skilled bricklayer probably would use a pointing trowel for this, but this is DIY. So there we go, and it can be quite. You can get, when you've done it a bit, you'll get quite adept at it, and you'll be able to do the stretchers quite quickly. So make sure we're pushed in. Don't worry too much about it going over the face of the bricks, because you will brush that off later. So we're doing okay. A little bit more. So we're going to do basically 3 or 4 bricks, and then just make sure it's all pushed in. Then the perp. Oh well, we've got a little bit there to do. There we go. Make sure there's no voids. Right. Now then, the perps. Make sure it's all nice and flat. And then we're going to press down. We're going to press downwards and away, so down and away like that, to pick it up on the pointing tool and then put it in. If the pointing tool don't fit in, that doesn't matter. You just turn the pointing tool sideways a little bit and force it in, and then strike it off after. And then when we finish, that's it. We'll get the we'll leave the tool marks, but we're not too worried. We're going to do all the perps first, and then we'll leave the tool mark on the stretchers afterwards. So a little bit more in there, a little bit more at the top. You don't have to pick up a lot on the tool, just enough to push in, and then you can come in again with a second or even a third bit. There we go. And a bit more, or even in this case a 4th and 5th bit. There we go. And then so the perps, they'll all be different widths. When they're laying these bricks, they're working to time. They want to get as much done as possible. They don't pay a great deal of attention to the perps. Then just scrape off all the loose, and then we just go along the stretcher and put the tool mark in. There we go. And then that leaves it all smooth and shiny as well. Oops, I've got to redo that a little bit. Right, so tool marks in, and that's called striking off. And then take away the loose, and we're done. Then we're going to now brush off the bit that we did above. It's only been done for probably half an hour, but gently brush it off with the soft brush. Sorry you can't see me doing that top bit, but gently brush it off with the soft brush. Then if there's a bit that's a little bit harder than what you expected, that's when you need the slightly stiffer brush. But just brush the brick itself. There we go, there's a bit there, look, see that, and the brick comes up clean. And sometimes using the harder brush, it will take away your tooling mark, but don't worry about that, because there we go, the whole thing done. I'll do that bottom bit later. All done. Brick. I much prefer to use a float. It doesn't hold as much cement or pointing, but I think it's slightly neater.
The outside is going to be a bit poor by the time you return it.
There we go. And I like to give it just a little sprinkle of water. Not enough to run down the bricks, but just enough to dampen the bricks, just to keep the moisture content up, to slow the drying of the lime mix. If you have lead sticking out over a window like this, then be sure there should be some breather holes on top of the lead in the stretcher pointing. Make sure you keep them holes clear, because they are designed to run water out that could get through the outside course of bricks. Well, I hope this helps. All I can say is good luck, stay safe, bye for now.